Welcome to Be Bold America. Our program today is how our economic religion is dragging civilization towards overshoot and collapse. America has fatal flaws in its economic paradigm. Neoclassical economics has ruled the United States for most of the past century. Valid economics cannot be separated from values and what it means to be human. Any notion of utility must honor and encourage the best within us. At this, neoclassical economics is an abject failure. Neoclassical economics legitimizes the short-term pillage of Earth and discounts away the value of future civilizations, indeed for all future life on our planet. Dr. Richard Nolthenius will be dissecting its worst flaws for us, with a special emphasis on how it trivializes climate damage to our present and future, and how its proponents have allied themselves to be servants not to humanity, but to their paymasters in corporate America and in the halls of political power. We have big things to do. Our interview guest is that very Dr. Richard Nolthenius. Dr. Nolthenius is a member of the Earth Futures Institute with a specialty in economics at the University of California, Santa Cruz. He is the astronomy program chair at Cabrillo College. In the past 10 years, Richard added climate science to his expertise, teaching a comprehensive course in climate science and its civilization context. By examining the climate science problem and searching for solutions, he has found it is connected fundamentally to, well, everything. In addition, Richard is a contributing chapter author in Climate Abandoned. We're on the endangered species list, a #1 Amazon bestseller. Welcome back to Be Bold America, Dr. Nolthenius.
Well, thank you for having me, Jill. Delighted to be here.
It's my pleasure. Obviously, one of our favorite topics is talking about the climate crisis so we can learn more about it and how to stop it from happening. Rick, economics seems a bit far from your primary field of astronomy. Why don't you briefly tell us how you became interested in economics and how it relates to our current climate crisis?
Sure thing. So I've been an active investor and needed to understand economics at a decent level for 40 years. However, that was a rather narrow context. As I got into climate science, motivated in 2010 by confronting climate denialism at my own college, I became interested in, well, just about everything. And one of the things that I learned, I came across this really intriguing work by Tim Garrett linking the thermodynamics of civilization with economics. And I was immediately fascinated because my master's work was in thermodynamics, and I was a rocket scientist, actually, in San Diego for some years. I immediately got it. I figured, and I wondered, why didn't I see this before? My God, this is really, really fascinating. And so then my study of economics ramped up quite a bit. And unfortunately, all the learning I've done has only made me more outraged at what I see.
Well, you use the term neoclassical economics. Can you tell us what defines this? What is neoclassical economics?
Yeah. It evolved out of classical economics quite a long time ago, but we don't want to get too lost in the technical weeds, so what I want is to emphasize more the theoretical underbasing that it has and how it is not helping us to actually improve the betterment of civilization.
Well, and you talk about also it becoming more in play since 1970s and Reagan.
Yes. It's so it begins innocently enough. You define a utility function, which is defined very generally as human betterment, and then you express that in terms of variables. And then
so the notion of utility means somebody's doing for the betterment of society.
No.
For
themselves.
Of themselves.
Yeah,
the opposite. Okay.
Right.
All right.
Well, not necessarily
I'm glad I clarified
but
that.
It kind of turns out that way
okay.
in many contexts. Yeah, so utility, that's another thing they do poorly is they unnecessarily or rather ill-advisedly port microeconomics, which is the economics that individuals supposedly obey, and dress it up a little teeny bit and turn it into macroeconomics, which is now prescriptions for civilization as a whole. And that's unjustified in ways that we'll talk about. But let me define neoclassical for you a little bit.
Yeah.
So there are other schools of economic theory, but neoclassicals dominated the U.S. mostly in the last century, and especially since the late 70s and with Reagan. So they define this utility function, and they vary the parameters to find when this utility is maximized and advocate that to define recommended actions and policy agenda.
So utility is refined for the benefit of themselves.
Yes.
Got it.
Yeah, they assume homo economicus. This is a rational man. Okay.
Oh my!
And rational man has perfect knowledge. His goal-seeking behavior is to maximize his personal utility. But in fact, hardly you get out of the introduction of their papers before it is redefined as GDP, as spending.
Ah.
So he's really maximizing his financial well-being and not his actual total well-being.
So we're back to money.
And now, I'm not going to conclude with money is the root of all evil. I think that's really ridiculous, actually. We need money. We need a unit of account, a way to transact, to specialize in what we do and trade with others and so forth. So it's not the money aspect that is wrong. It is that it is way too narrow. And if you really want to maximize utility, you have to be more general and look at what actually maximizes it. Because people ruin their lives every day with addictions caused by corporate America, and this is not to their betterment. Okay, but I got off a little bit here. So, homo economicus, rational man, perfect knowledge, goal-seeking behavior to maximize his utility. But in fact, this is not what a human being really is. In fact, it more describes what I would call the Terminator. You know the movie.
No, the movie,
Yeah.
yes.
So now the Terminator was not evil. He was not cackling with glee at the destruction of all the stuff that ended up getting in his way. He was very goal-oriented. He was very masterful. He had incredible knowledge. He had incredible abilities. And he executed them to high competence, just like capitalism is doing today. But
Without emotion.
But the earth just got in the way, you see. And for the Terminator, trucks and people and so forth got in the way, and so they had to be eliminated. This is not utility in any meaningful sense. So here's key neoclassical economic characteristics. The economic players act independently, and especially given neoclassical assumptions that the value of a good or service is determined not so much by the cost of production, but by the subjective perception of value by the buyers. And this, unfortunately, lets open a Pandora's box of manipulation and psychological manipulation to try and get people to buy things.
Well, the whole industry was
good for
created
them.
around that, which is called the advertising industry.
Yeah.
Their whole industry is how to get people, and they've even studied people's brains on
Exactly. Oh,
how
they
they
have. Very
could
good.
get to that spot in the brain that makes people want to buy that product.
They get you feeling not quite enough, but you could be enough as a
If you
human
buy
being.
this.
If you buy, now you can't just buy any of my products. You've got to buy the one with the highest profit margin.
Aha.
See, so this is utility maximizing. We are maximizing short-term profits. Now, rational and independent are clearly unrealistic here because tribalism influences behavior all the time.
What do you mean by rational and independent?
Well, this is their terms.
Oh,
for
these are their
homo
terms.
economicus, the
Okay.
individual who is acting to maximize his utility.
This rational man.
Yeah, rational man. In other words, rational is really just I'm maximizing my money. Now, maybe that's going to mean you got to steal it from somebody. Maybe you have to lie, you have to cheat, you have to do immoral things.
Oh,
well,
my.
you don't let that get in the way. You are maximizing utility. So that doesn't show up in their functions anywhere. So I already told you. So utility.
Well, this is reminding me of the whole issue about corporations or people. You know, if the corporation was a person, they'd be a psychopath.
Yeah.
They don't have any humility, empathy. A corporation isn't a person. They are there to maximize the profit.
Well, there was a study that I think I quoted in an earlier show that who did that? Darn, can't remember the name. Anyway, they showed that the rate of incidence of psychopaths among CEOs was about 20%. Among the general
Yes,
population,
yes.
it's only 1%.
1%.
20%.
But they
is
gravitate to those power positions. And boards hire them because if you need to let go 10,000 people, who's the best to do it but a psychopath that has no feelings towards letting 10,000,
right.
putting 10,000 people on the street.
Well, it's just one example of the psychopathic things they do. But yeah, hiring teams of psychologists to try and get you to buy stuff that that is not good for you. Obesity rates skyrocketing. I mean, you could go on and on.
So what are the key flaws of neoclassical economics? You talk about key flaws in the context of our political economic crisis.
Right. Well, first of all, neoclassical economists have no appreciation for the biophysical limits of the earth. They want, ideally, to be growing the economy at 2% a year, real growth, not just inflationary, but real growth. So that would double every road, every building, every person, everything of civilization in just 36 years.
Oh my.
Which is not even a geological instant. It's a geological plank time. I mean, it is so incredibly tiny.
It's nothing in time.
It's absolutely unsustainable. We're already using up almost 2 Earths worth of sustainability every day on one Earth.
Wow.
So biodiversity and everything is plummeting. So they have no appreciation for the biophysical limits of Earth. They think that substitutability and pricing will always solve everything. They get impatient with doomists, like I suppose they would call me, for thinking, Malthus was wrong and Paul Ehrlich was wrong, and those guys just didn't appreciate innovation. And what I would say in return is I do appreciate innovation, but innovate to accomplish what? Is the problem. See, you just want to maximize exploitation.
Money. Right.
Exploitation of the earth for your short-term gain, because you discount away the value of not only your own life, but all generations beyond you, practically to zero.
Well, what the fossil fuel industry has been doing, and many corporate industries do, is they privatize the profits and socialize the expense, meaning we all have to pay for the expenses with the bad water
pollution
or air.
And so forth.
Right. But they privatize money and socialize the expenses.
And then they hold us for ransom because when things start to go south, like during the Great Recession of 2008, they say, oh, my God, things are so bad. Oh, my God, you got to do something. And so what do? Well, they flood the money. They induce the Fed to flood the money into the system. And, of course, most of that goes to the banks and the corporations. And that money then gets put into the stock market where they manipulate more money out of you. And it's...
So let's continue this after our break. You are listening to Be Bold America on KSQD 90.7, 89.5, and 89.7 FM, serving the California Central Coast. Many voices, one station. Listen globally online from the ksqd.org website. Our topic today is how our economic religion is dragging civilization towards overshoot and collapse. Our bold guest is Dr. Richard Nolthinius, who is a member of the Earth's Futures Institute with a specialty in economics at the University of California, Santa Cruz. And he is the astronomy program chair at Cabrillo College. And you may also get Rick's PDF on the fatal flaws of neoclassical economics. Rick, how can people find that PDF?
Question. Yeah, so if you just Google Cabrillo College Astronomy, you'll find my homepage. And if you look on the right side of my homepage, you'll see a link to my association with the Earth Futures Institute, which is at UC Santa Cruz. I want to clarify, too, I'm not a faculty at UC Santa Cruz. I've been a visiting researcher and a lecturer, but I'm actually not on the faculty there. And if you click on that link to Earth Futures Institute, you'll come up with a page, and at the bottom of that page is linked all of my economics talks.
And the one that we're talking about today, The Fatal Flaws of Neoclassical Economics. And I'm your host, Jill Cody.
6 corporations own 90% of the media in the United States. Isn't it about time we own some too? KSQD 90.7 FM, your community radio station, your voice, your concerns. Go to www.ksqd.org to get involved and support locally owned grassroots community media. K-Squid, KSQD FM.
Hello, Hello, K-Squid listeners. I'm Tom Hartman, and each weekday at 4 p.m., I bring you a different perspective on the news than you're likely to hear on most media outlets. Please join me on KSQD Santa Cruz, your ink spot on the dial for the Tom Hartman program, heard now for the first time ever in the Monterey Bay area at 90.7 FM, weekdays at 4 p.m. That's Progressive Talk and Conversation with me, Tom Hartman, weekdays at 4 p.m. on KSQD 90.7 FM. Tag, you're it.
We're back. Would you like a friend to hear this interview on how our economic religion is dragging civilization towards overshoot and collapse? Be Bold America is available as a podcast on Apple, Spotify, Podcast Addict, Downcast, Overcast, and YouTube. Subscribe for free or listen to the show on Be Bold America's homepage at the ksqd.org website. I also would like to give a special shout out not only to our listeners in the United States and Canada, but especially to those overseas in the United Kingdom, Austria, Germany, and Algeria. Thank you so much for listening. Those of us in California love that you tune in. Now, Rick, then how do the neoclassical economics place value or utility on future life and future generations?
Well, let's start with the worst first so that we can get that out of the way. I would consider the worst and the most sociopathic of their flaws is that their utility functions, which they're seeking to optimize, maximize, they give exactly zero value in their utility functions to future generations.
Oh my!
They have no voting power today.
They have children. They have grandchildren. They get.
I would challenge them, Jill, to sit down with their granddaughter and tell them this.
Yes.
Explicitly.
Yeah, I'm not interested in your future.
I even made a cartoon, which I've put various places, with a William Nordhaus stand-in talking to his granddaughter, and his granddaughter asking, "Oh, Uncle Bill, will you love me forever?" And he says, "Oh, of course, sweetheart, of course I will. Subject to a 3% annual discount rate, of course." It's
they
absurd.
don't consider the future at all.
They don't consider. We must act as protectors of future generations because they're not here.
Right.
They're going to inherit the earth that we leave them. We have to be their protectors. And what do the neoclassical economists do? They say, no, it's all for us. What basically they're saying is, of what worth is distant future people's lives to me?
That's to me. Me.
Me, exactly. Mm-hmm. So this is reprehensibly selfish in the worst sense of the word selfish. If they were actually truly selfish, I would like to redefine selfish in a better way.
Okay.
If you were truly selfish in a good way, you would consider your own self-respect, your own feelings of the joy of generosity and so forth as important and as worth keeping and worth nurturing.
And being selfish for your family.
For your family. Exactly. Mm-hmm. And really all life. Mm-hmm. All life.
And all life, right.
And they are so emotionally cut off from any of that they are stuck with whatever rewards they can get, which is just the money.
Are they taught this in economic departments?
Well, it's
How do they cut off their hearts?
Interesting that you should mention that, because studies have shown that merely thinking about economics turns you into a more miserly, selfish person.
Really?
Really. Yes, that was going to be one of the fatal flaws I was going to get to.
Well, we can get to it more. Yeah.
So fatal flaw number one is that they include no value in their utility functions for future generations or future life, given exactly zero. Their discount rate's typically 3%, so even the year 2100, when their grandchildren are still alive, is essentially given zero value. They don't care in terms of their advocacy if by the year 2100 we're living in a world like, I don't know, what apocalypse movie can I think of?
Right.
The Book of Eli or something.
A dystopian world.
A dystopian world, exactly. So it is not just that they recognize some people as morally selfish, it's that the neoclassicals applaud this as their goal-worthy policy advocacy demands. This is what they advocate. It'd be one thing if they said, well, alas, individuals, they discount away their future too much and they want it all now. And that would be one thing. And at least you would be perhaps beginning to recognize that, that's not actually acting very properly selfishly. But they don't. They're actually advocating this for policy. And this is why we're heading down the path we are.
And it sounds sociopathic.
It is sociopathic.
Now, is it the system that's sociopathic, or once again, are the people that are making the decisions
Well, the system
come
is
to the
sociopathic.
positions and they're sociopathic?
And it is an interrelated network of systems that reinforce each other. The politics, the money. Money is fungible. It's tradable for anything. And as long as that's true, there's going to be people who want money more than anything else. And I even find myself feeling bad about the fact that I've got to, try and keep my savings from going to zero because it's all I've got to live on too in this very expensive town. We're kind of forced into it. And I think the thing that most keeps me up at night is...
Oh, you're getting to a question
You're
that I was
getting to
going
a
to
question
ask
that
you.
I think you were going to ask me because I know you like that one. Is the fact that we might be genetically programmed to behave in exactly the way that encourages neoclassical economists to flourish in our society and do what they do. Even though there's a part of me that also says, but I don't think I'm a freak. I don't think you're a freak, Jill. I think you're a real human. I think I'm a real human being. I think we're just in better contact with that humanity. But there is something in our system which, the maximum power principle and the thermodynamics of civilization, which seems to encourage us to try and basically outcompete everybody else in every other life form. And the Bible even encourages that. That we shall have dominion over the earth.
Right, dominion over the earth. That's right. It seems like a Western culture because the indigenous peoples didn't have that. They had the seventh generation. They always made decisions with the seventh generation in mind.
And, Daniel Schmachtenberger in Nate Hagen's excellent podcast had a recent one, and he said something I did not know. He said the Iroquois, at a certain point, their fishing hooks, they had an improvement in their fishing hooks technology. And what they did not do with that is then fish out more of the fish and ruin their streams. No, the cultural norm became down. Now you will take that as extra time that you can spend with your family and with people and with, making a happier life. And that was a cultural thing that they actually obeyed. Are we doing that? No, of course not. Nothing. Nothing like that.
I think I got you off topic there.
Well, that happens between us, doesn't it?
We love to talk together.
Yeah, it's just what happens. Yeah, so let's do fatal flaw number 2. Assuming people act rationally with full knowledge and independently. So I think we already talked about that a bit. But it's certainly true that we have suicides, we have murders, we have obesity, we have all manner of reprehensible behavior by corporate leaders and political leaders encouraging us to do exactly that because it maximizes their profits.
And you also say that people just act irrationally. That in fact, that this main assumption that man is rational is invalid to start with.
Right. We're run by neurochemicals.
We're really irrational. Right. And the emotions.
And those can come in at the wrong points, and you may not pause and ask, gee, this is motivating me to do X. Is that really? Let's play that out a little in the future. Let's see, does this actually make me happier? Gee, you know what? This is not going to make me happier.
So how does fatal flaw number 2 relate to neoclassical economics? That we're really
they assume
irrational.
that we're rational, and that rationality means that we're going to maximize our money. And maximize. If you ask plenty of psychologists who have talked with corporate CEOs who are fabulously wealthy, you don't find a greater incidence of happiness.
That's
Those people
true.
are
I've
not
read
happier.
studies like that.
Yeah, exactly. So, okay, I'm going to bring in something else I didn't put down in here to notes, but which is great. So there's this graph that we've probably seen that shows that if you graph happiness versus income levels, it kind of looks to shallow out above about, let's inflation correct it, to about $80,000 a year, something like that. And then above that, you don't get a whole lot
You
more
don't see
happiness.
a lot of benefit after
But
that.
you know what? That graph, I think, is misleading. I'm
Why?
not saying the graph is wrong. I'm saying the graph is misleading. If you plot that graph instead as a log-log scale, you'll see that it's roughly linear. And what it really means is if you're going to get the same bump in happiness, I'm sorry, I'm banging the table here because I'm all into this, and Jill is telling me don't do that. In order to get the same bump in happiness, you have to do more than your last bump. So your first million may feel great. Your second million is not going to feel as great. No, you've got to go up to maybe 3 million before you're going to feel as good as you did get for the first million. And then if you want to feel even the same level of happiness again, you're going to have to go up to 10 million. And it's basically a logarithmic and therefore exponentially increasing thing. It's driving us to be like those zombies in World War Z. Do you remember that trailer with the zombies all crawling over each other to get out of? That's like us. It's tragic is what it is.
Well, Tom Hartman talks about people that need to keep make more money and more money when they've already got $5 billion.
Tom Hartman is so great.
Isn't he great? But he calls them hoarders. It's a hoarder mentality. Yeah. But I also see it as what you're explaining as an addiction to that rush. Yeah. To the I got to get more because I felt really great then when I made that first million, but I need to feel great again, and so they do
Psychology
what they need to do
is so important here
to get that rush again.
If you're not getting your personal happiness from being a genuine good human being with generosity and helping future life and all of these wonderful things, you've already sold your soul to the devil. What do you got? Well, you got the proceeds. You got the money. That's all now you've got. And neoclassical economists take that and run with it.
Well, this is probably a good time to take a break. You are listening to Be Bold America on KSQD 90.7, 89.5, and 89.7 FM, serving the California Central Coast. Many voices, one station. Listen globally online from the ksqd.org website. Our guest today, Dr. Richard Nothenius, has been examining the climate science problem and has been searching for solutions. And he's found climate science is connected fundamentally to, well, everything. In addition, Richard is a contributing chapter author in Climate Abandoned, We're on the Endangered Species List, a #1 Amazon bestseller. We will be right back after Jim Hightower's commentary titled, SCOTUS is meant to be a court, not our supreme ruler. I'm your host, Jill Cody.
What is a SCOTUS? Sounds like a prehistoric critter scuttling along some seabed. But no, it's the acronym for our Supreme Court of the United States. SCOTUS is meant to be the arbiter of legal disputes over what our laws mean. Yet, who are these arbiters? How are they elected? Why don't we even know their names? And if they go rogue, imposing their personal autocratic beliefs on our nation's historic democratic ideals, what then? Well, structurally, SCOTUS is undemocratic, a relic of monarchical rule. Unlike the 535 members of the legislative branch, who are elected from diverse districts across America, there are only 9 Supremes, and none of the current bunch have ever faced the people, even in an election for dog catcher. They are handpicked by political and moneyed elites, and most blatantly lie to win approval for their lifetime appointments. Once enthroned, they have no accountability to us commoners who are expected to blindly obey their edicts. Today, out of 330 million Americans, 6 right-wing SCOTUS members have seized control of the court and our government. They claim supremacy over the people, the president, and the Congress, arbitrarily dictating what is legal for elected officials and the public to do. Indeed, they are now making up laws on abortion, presidential power, voting rights, environmental protection, and much more to suit their personal political and religious biases. Moreover, they operate behind closed doors with no disclosure of their conflicts of interest. This is Jim Hightower saying, call this what it is, a right-wing extremist power grab. And it is fast supplanting our people's historic democratic progress with a kleptocracy of autocratic, plutocratic, theocratic rule. The only remedy is a head-on people's rebellion to democratize this totally un-American court. The Hightower Radio Lowdown is made possible by you subscribers to Jim Hightower's Lowdown on Substack. Find us at jimhightower.substack.com.
Welcome back. Our topic today is how our economic religion is dragging civilization towards overshoot and collapse. And our bold guest today is Dr. Richard Nothenius, who's a member of the Earth Science Institute with a specialty in economics at the University of California, Santa Cruz. Now, Rick, why don't you continue with the flaws? I know that you have in your thinking here about neoclassical economics, you have 6 major flaws. Why don't you continue?
Yeah, there's actually many more than 6, but let me do a technical one now. So we've been talking about the moral flaws, but here's a technical flaw. So they define a function called the production function. It's given by the Cobb-Douglas relation, and it's composed independently between capital, which is raw materials and machines, and labor, which is people. Well, this is false because it is people, it is labor that actually creates capital, creates the machines. So there's the first problem. The second problem is even worse, and that is both of those are meaningless if you don't have energy to power them. And energy does not enter their mindset at all. I love this quote from Steve Keen. I highly recommend that you look up Steve Keen. He's
Keen.
Keen. He's a one-man wrecking crew for Neoclassical Economics in the technical sense. So he's a PhD economist. He's very competent, and he's written quite a bit. He's got a podcast, Debunking Economics. He's got a new book coming out, Rebuilding Economics from the Ground Floor. I've been getting advanced chapters of it because I'm buddies with Steve, and I can't wait till the book comes out, and I hope it gets a lot of attention. But this is one of the things that he's also pointed out as well. The lack of energy being in this relationship properly. So, in fact, both labor and capital are functions of energy. And he's got this great quote, labor without energy is a corpse. He's got another one, capital without energy is a statue.
Oh, that's pretty good.
But wait, all good wisdoms come in threes, right? Kepler's laws, Newton's laws. So I had to come up with a third.
Okay.
So I've got a third here, and that is that capitalism without energy is a wet dream.
Oh, my.
Because of all this backslapping self-congratulation about how great capitalism is. Well, you disconnect it from energy, which we're in danger of doing as we go through the carbon pulse, and it wanes later this century, and we're confronted with the material shortfalls we're going to have and trying to actually go to a supposed all solar and wind. It's not really going to happen the way you think. We're going to confront that.
Wow.
Yeah. So that's a mathematical flaw, and so their Cobb-Douglas function is meaningless. It should be removed from the curriculum, and to the extent that CPI, Consumer Price Index, and PPI are influenced by these things, I think that needs to be redone. Fatal flaw number 4, discounting the future. So they falsely port microeconomics of an individual and recast it into macroeconomics. Now here's the problem. Individuals die. So there is value, there is proper appreciation of that in wanting to use up what you've got, a finite resource in a finite time, because you're going to die. So how that's done is through Hotling's rule. The problem is that when you port that to macroeconomics, civilization does not have a death date, at least not one unless it's enforced by the neoclassicals, right? So we don't want to discount the future away. If you look at the astronomical things that can do us in, giant asteroid impact, a gamma ray burster, and so forth, the sun finally getting so hot that life becomes impossible, those are on timescales of 300 or 400 million years. They're essentially infinitely off in the future. And yet we're facing possible extinction of civilization in the next century or two if we keep doing what we're doing. So this is
and we won't
absurd.
even talk about nuclear.
Well, then there's
nuclear
we really
bombs
do. Yeah,
there's
nuclear war could really end it all, and
right.
we don't want the wrong hands on the buttons like it looks like we may get. So the annual discount rate should be vanishingly tiny, commensurate with the odds of an asteroid impact or supernova. So 0.00001% or something. But no, they want to put it at something like 3 or 4 or even 5% I've seen, which is absurd. It's discounting away the value of your own children. Fatal flaw number 5, attaching zero value to a person's or a country's self-respect. In other words, the only value they place is how much money you got. So is it any wonder, guided by these people, that that's what we end up with is people who put all their value on how rich they are, even though they're not actually happy. Self-esteem, honorably and therefore genuinely earned, is not in their model. So the most immediate and tragic cost of our wanton destruction of Earth into the future is the severe damage to any genuine self-respect and self-esteem that we have. All the reason to psychologically repress the experience of damaged self-esteem and try and fill that hole with something else. And what do they fill it with? They fill it with money. Fatal flaw number 6, corruption of the goals of utility seeking to satisfy their paymasters. Now, this is from a very prominent economist, this quote I'm about to give. This is from William Barnett. Quote, "We macroeconomists work within an environment of pressure and influence from our governments and societies. While few are willing to recognize or admit the existence of those pressures or the influences of pressures on our own work, a clear understanding of trends in macroeconomic research is not possible without recognition of the influence of the intellectual, societal, and political environment into which our research is conducted."
So
that's a fancy way of saying that, yeah, we're corrupt.
Yeah, what does that mean?
Yeah, so that's a fancy dance around the fact that, yeah, we're corrupt, but you know what, we get well paid for it, and so that's what happens.
So he's saying that economists are corrupt.
I would say that the science of economics that they are trying to promote is corrupt. Are the economists themselves corrupt? Boy, do I really want to go online saying that?
No, probably not.
Probably not. I don't
but
want to
they're in
have
a system.
happen to be.
They're in a system.
They're in a system which encourages it, yes.
Okay.
I don't think there's much doubt about that. Yeah, now, this is a terrible example. I mean, it's an awesome example, but terrible. So there's an economist I know who's trying to argue that we should be financially motivating people to be more climate friendly. This is typical of economist thinking, yet flawed at a fundamental level. So why do I say that? The thermodynamics of civilization shows the entropy reduction is happening by paying and encumbering new energy ongoing, and it is adding yet more entropy than the entropy you reduced. In other words, a little bit of civilizing that you did is going to be paid by even more entropy.
So explain entropy.
Okay.
Explain how that works.
Okay. So I'm a big admirer of Tim Garrett, who I've talked about, I think, before here, and he identified this interesting relationship, which is that the primary energy that we use today, the rate at which we consume primary energy today, is not proportional to today's GDP.
And primary energy is?
Primary energy is the energy as given to us by nature.
Oh.
It's a bigger number than the refined energy that comes out of your copper wires or your gasoline engine and so forth. That's
the
processed
source.
energy. It's the source energy. So you're going to have to do work and expend some of your energy just to process it into usable energy. So anyway, you want to do this in terms of primary to, keep it honest. Primary energy consumption rates are proportional not to this year's GDP. It's proportional to the sum total of all past GDP. Right back to the Stone Age. Now, if you want a proof that that's true, I'll tell you right now, we don't have it. I'm working on it, but I don't have it yet. But what I have done is I have recast his work in terms of entropy.
Tim Garrett's work in terms of entropy, which I think speaks more directly to economists who might actually be curious about it. So far, they are not. I could go into a story there, but it's only going to make me angry, so I won't. But what it does is it shows that you can't really get out of this. You can't continue to grow without encumbering more energy eventually than you can tap. Growth must end, and in fact, the way it's probably going to end is overshoot and collapse. That's more year by year looking like a higher and higher probability. And it's certainly if we follow the prescriptions of the neoclassicals who believe, innovation will always solve this. Innovation will always get us out of this. Actually, it won't. If you look at the physicist Geoffrey West's work on what innovation does, what it does is yes, innovation will save you momentarily, but it has its own finite time singularity exponentially. And so the payoff times get smaller and smaller and smaller. And whatever innovation may also use some energy.
Well, exactly.
Yeah.
There's Jevons paradox. So what happens is when you try and improve energy efficiency, what you actually end up doing is having to use more energy. It doesn't save you. It only saves you on a per per dollar basis. Okay, so you can improve energy efficiency. I'll just tell you, energy efficiency has improved over the last century by about 1.1% a year.
Is that it?
1.1%. So you say, well, gee, that's not too bad. I mean, that's a 60% improvement in my lifetime. Hey, that's pretty good. Yeah, but energy consumption has gone up by GDP, gone up by 2.2% a year.
I don't mean to throw you off of what you're talking about right now, but what came up for me is the energy that the Bitcoin.
Well, then there's that.
It came,
Bitcoin and now
using.
AI.
I was just going to say AI.
Yeah.
So AI is coming, but I understand that the energy that
Exactly.
artificial intelligence is going to take is astounding, and Bitcoin has been that way too.
Right. So energy use is going up. We set a new record in even fossil or carbon, let's say carbon energy, last year. So peak oil is not quite yet here, and so it's just getting worse in terms of energy. It's also getting worse in terms of material use. So studies show that material use goes up linearly, not linearly, but goes up exponentially with GDP. So people talk about, well, we'll just dematerialize, and they like to use the iPhone as an example. I mean, look at this phone. This phone, the materials here is a fraction of that old carbon phone that could do nothing but dial, and so look at that. Well, yeah, that's an example.
But
well,
look at the energy.
What do we do with savings? I'll tell you what we do with them. We spend them. Mm-hmm. And we don't just spend them, we spend them with interest, because we then take that money and we increase our debt levels. And so what we're really doing is we're encumbering future energy and also motivating current energy to go up, up, up. And you're not going to get saved by nuclear. Well, you could get short-term saved by nuclear,
small nuclear
plants. But you have to change the whole paradigm. And the later we wait, I won't use the example I was about to say. Okay, I won't do that.
Erase.
Yeah, it's a family show. Anyway, so you cannot keep growing. What you're doing, and Nate Hagens actually gave me a like on this yesterday when I put this into my X feed, but what we're doing is we are climbing the civilization tree from the low-hanging fruit, which is all gone, to higher and higher and yet more fragile and bendier limbs, to the last fruit that's available. And when you get up that high, you're at high risk now of just falling and not bruising your knee, but breaking your neck.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, I do have a question for you, but it's a good time for us to break. And if you're just joining us, my bold guest today is Dr. Richard Nolthenius, who's a member of the Earth Futures Institute with a specialty in economics at the University of California, Santa Cruz. And he is the astronomy program chair at Cabrillo College. Now, Rick, tell us again about how people could find this PDF, The Fatal Flaws of
Google.
Neoclassical Economics. Tell us again
Google
how.
knows all. Although they did get rid of their original meme, do no evil.
I know. I noticed that several years ago, as a matter of fact.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
We won't go there anymore.
Okay.
Anyway, so, but Google or Start Page or, your favorite search engine, Cabrillo College Astronomy. Just those 3 words. You'll find me, because I'm the only faculty member in astronomy. And you'll find my homepage. And if you go to my homepage, look on the right side, and you'll see Earth Futures Institute, and click on that link, and then you'll get linked to all my podcasts. I've got tons of PDFs from all of the chapters I give to my students as well. More slides than you can shake a million sticks at.
Right,
actually.
right.
Thousands of slides. Yeah.
Well, and I'd like to spell Cabrillo, too, for those who are listening in other countries. It's Cabrillo, Cabrillo College. So thank you for sharing that. You are listening to Be Bold America on KSQD 90.7, 89.5, and 89.7 FM, serving the California Central Coast. Many voices, one station, and I'm your host, Jill Cody.
Why is community radio important to you?
I'm just looking around here at the birthday party and my heart is full. I mean, it is so wonderful. People of all ages and all different backgrounds. And I was listening to those radio on the way in, and so diverse, and just people talking to their neighbors.
KSQD On Demand. Listen to KSQD talk shows, including news, interviews, events, and more, anytime from your smartphone or computer. Subscribe to your favorite shows on YouTube, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or TuneIn, or visit ksqd.org/subscribe. On-demand audio featuring many voices from one station, K-Squid.
We're back. And Dr. Nothinius, the question that I was going to ask just quickly is, there's a phrase, sustainability, that's out a lot. Sustainability. Right. And people think that if they live sustainably, that all will be well. What does sustainability mean, and does it really have an impact on neoclassical economics? Can it compensate for neoclassical economics?
Well, in principle, that's true. If you live sustainably, then we could keep going.
If we all did.
If we all did. The problem is that people think in very small terms as to what's sustainable. We can't support a population of 8 billion people all striving to live, not even like Americans, but just Europeans who have about half of the energy impact per capita that we do. We can't do 8 billion people like that. What's a truly sustainable human population on into the astronomical future? Boy, Sandra Faber, my colleague, has given numbers she thinks. We don't. First of all, we don't know exactly what that number is, but she's given numbers of order 100 million.
Oh people. My!
So way below the 8 billion, or that's almost 9 billion. We're heading towards 9 now. I don't know if I would be quite that dire. I think if we bucked up and we decided to really recycle better, we might be able to do 200, 300, 500 million people. But no, for the astronomical future, we have to stop. What we have to do is go backwards for a while. So we have to degrow. So one of the things that is going to be essential is coming to grips with that psychologically. Neoclassicals, of course, don't. They think, no, we'll innovate our way out. Everything will be great. They put no limits on what the Earth can do. Oh, we'll just go. We'll grab more asteroids. We'll colonize other planets. It's absurd to think that somehow we're going to move to Mars, and after we've trashed the Earth. I mean, it's been said, and I totally agree as an astronomer, that the very best, warmest, most wonderful day on Mars is still an absolute hell compared to the most decrepit place on Earth. You know, the bottom of the Marianas Trench or the top of Mount Everest.
It's not an option.
It's not an option. It's ridiculous.
To start wrapping up, maybe we can now turn to economics and climate change.
Right. So this is where it's worst of all, and where I got the most infuriated. And if you go to those PDFs, you'll see that I have 3 separate talks that I put together on the economics of William Nordhaus's advocacy with his DICE model for how to deal with climate damage, how to cost climate damage, the societal cost of carbon. And it's absolutely absurd. And you don't have to believe me. You can believe Michael Mann, who's one of our great climate scientists. And if I could find his quote somewhere. There it is. Michael Mann says, frankly, such claims absurdly underestimate true costs and damages of business as usual. They are based on a linear extrapolation of a coupled physics, politico-societal response that is in fact highly nonlinear and subject to collapse. There is no economy after civilization collapses. Now the problem is the starting problem is that they refuse to have climate scientists at all as part of their studies. They don't consult them. They don't bring them in. They're not co-authors. They are exclusively economists. Josh Farley has shown that they are the most insular and, I would say, the most insolent of all the social scientists.
Bringing in a climate scientist into the group probably make them feel they need to be responsible.
The party be over.
Yeah, the party be over, and they'd have to be responsible for what they're doing.
Right.
Also,
the DICE model just predicts that we would have almost zero cost, even at a plus 6 degrees centigrade world. Now, we're hitting 1.5 centigrade right now, and you can see some of the problems that we're having. And now you keep that 1.5 C, you're going to just accelerate the melt of Greenland, the melt of West Antarctica. The true costs of climate are off in the future. Climate is like a giant steamroller, but it's relentless. It may not have squashed you yet, but you can't just jump up and down in front of it and say, oh, well, innovation will solve you. No, it won't. Innovation only takes us down that road faster.
I think when I was in my training with Al Gore, he said something that, I don't know if it was 6 degrees Celsius or 6 degrees Fahrenheit, but that in the past, palm trees were growing in the Arctic at that warmth.
Yeah, so plus 6C. So there's this energy
6C.
balance model that was done by Kipke et al. That is also linked in what I've already done. Now, it's an energy balance model. That's not as good as a fully coupled ocean atmosphere climate model, I agree. But we don't know that it's wrong. But what it shows is that if you keep that until 2100, which says that in the IPCC, that's a plus 6 degree centigrade world.
We could see palm trees in the Arctic.
Jungles in the
Arctic.
It has happened at the Eocene. About 50 million years ago, temperatures were that high up there.
That's right.
And temperatures were so high that they're at the limit with which mammals can live.
Well,
the wet bulb temperature is exceeded, and basically you threaten all of human life.
Well, in these last few minutes, I'd like to ask what ideas you might have for us to keep doing, stop doing, and start doing as they relate to the fatal flaws of neoclassical economics. Our future depends on it.
Yeah. Okay, well, let's start with keep because it's a short list. Economics is an important, valid branch of study, so we should keep it. It may behave like astrology and religion in the hands of the neoclassicals, but that doesn't invalidate its importance. So we should keep some branches of economics. So Steve Keen, who I've praised, he's in the school we call post-Keynesians. He appreciates that the ability to create money can act as a capacitor and help save us from what could otherwise be collapses under the influence of private debt. Biophysical economists, of course, so I'm talking about people like Herman Daly, and of course Steve Keen appreciates this now as well. Econophysics, the insights of physics into civilization systems, so I've done some work in there, and there's much great work. The insights of civilization as a thermodynamic system. So here, actually right now, Steve Keen and Tim Garrett are teaming up and about to complete a paper, another paper. This is a good direction to go, and I think my work in this area is also a good direction in framing it in terms of entropy, because entropy is a fancy way of talking about disorder, and that's something I think even the average person can appreciate in a civilization context.
Disorder and decline?
Civilization can be defined as the lowering of the entropy of certain parts of reality, but it's going to come at the expense of adding to entropy in the remaining parts. And you need to understand those and understand the laws of thermodynamics in order to be able to see how civilization is going to progress. I'd also like to give a shout out to Eric Weinstein's insights on reflexivity, a George Soros concept, a kind of cause and effect reflexivity back and forth, and how mathematically to treat that. And you don't do it with high school calculus like the neocons. You do it with not the neocons, the neoclassicals, the economists. Instead, you cast it in terms of gauge theory. And I think that's work that the economists just didn't even want to look at. So what do you stop? Okay, you stop discounting the future of civilization. You completely eliminate neoclassical economists from their rather smug and superior positions of power in corporate and political backrooms, and in academia as well. We need to pay them. Here's a proposal. Let's pay them. Okay? So I don't want to be retributive here. Let's pay them. Let's give them $20 million apiece. Now, what do we get for our $20 million? Giving it to each of those neoclassicals. Okay, you can now retire. Retire happily. And here, you cannot publish anything more in economics. And for that, it'd be a bargain. It would be a bargain if we could do that. Pay them all. $20 million. No problem. So what do we start doing? Well, we need to now refill the departments of economics, but we appreciate those who appreciate the limits to growth on a finite planet with finite rates of energy tapping. We need to be the protectors of future life and future generations who are given no voice and no vote in our current paradigm. Instead, we're acting as their pillagers and their rapists even. As Greta Thunberg has pugnaciously expressed at the UN, you have stolen my future.
That was a powerful
That was
statement.
a powerful
she made.
statement.
Really,
I love it.
I do
We
too.
need more like her. We need to design strategies which will downclimb us from our near-fatal, precarious position that we're in right now, even before we hit the crux move in our supposed psychological compensation, the manifest destiny and greatness that we all delusionally are being appealed to by the neoclassicals. We have to appreciate the importance of nurturing and maximizing our genuine utility. That includes expressing honesty, deep connection with our true values, generosity, love for all life now and in the future, rather than competitive, biblical, goaded dominion. Those would be my keep, stop, start.
Well, they're very powerful, Rick. And what leadership do we have that would do this?
Well, we're going to need a revolution, and I think I agree with Jim Hansen. It's going to have to be led by the young, who have the most at stake, and also the least to lose. Mm-hmm. I don't mean a violent revolution. I've never advocated violence.
Well, Rick, thank you for being our bold and impressive guest today. Very impressive.
Thank you.
So good to have you back on the show. Thank you again. As a reminder, Be Bold America is available as a podcast. Now you may listen to the show anytime for free by subscribing through your favorite podcast platform. Also, you may reach me anytime at info@ksqd.org. I want to give a special thank you to our talented Be Bold America's program engineer, Eliza James, and to our station's tireless program director, Howard Feldstein. You are listening to KSQD Santa Cruz and KSQT Prunedale. Many voices, one station. Listen worldwide online at ksqd.org. Stay tuned for Just for the Record with Gabe Kittle Serene. During these stressful times, I want you to remember something I try to live by. And that's a quote I'm going to end shows with from now on. Let your smile change the world. Don't let the world change your smile. My name is Jill Cody, and thank you for listening to Be Bold America. Until next time, keep, stop, start.